Okay, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to the Freedom Thinking for the Love of Life online retreat, March 2024.
Daddy.
Yes, Lucia.
Daddy.
Yeah, and there's Grandad John. Grandad John's online. Brilliant.
Hi. Wow.
Just in case anybody doesn't know that. Okay. Grandad John, give us a wave. There's Grandad John. Grandad John. Welcome back, everyone. And thanks to the new people for joining us. This is a via donation retreat. We just ask that if... Yes, Lucia? Is that Grandad John?
It is.
It is, isn't
Do
it?
you want to go to the auntie?
We just ask that people donate what they can. And if they can't afford to donate, we ask that people pay it forward with an act of kindness. That's the stipulation for the retreat. We're not going to take up too much time with any of that. I'm going to hand this over to Jen now, and Jen is going to introduce Keith Blevins. Keith, thanks so much for joining us, mate.
So nice to be here. So nice to be here.
I haven't gone online and actually looked at all of the different things that Keith has done in his life, but I was going to do a bit more of a personal introduction. We had a quick chat. Do you want to give it time to please?
I'll go and take a walk.
And do you want to take this?
Yep.
We've got 2 Zooms in one room now. For 2 seconds. She's upset because Dave's using my phone. She likes people to use their own things. Yeah, I spoke to Keith briefly yesterday, and we realised it's 2009 that we first met. And it was when me and my ex-husband Rudy went to Lacona and had started filming the Three Principles movie site. So Keith was one of the very early interviews that we did. And I remember we were sat in this big kind of wooden room at Pransky and Associates, and you got quite still and it was just one of those things when you're like, I am definitely recording, aren't I? Because I think something had just really occurred to you around that time that was so new that when you were speaking, you could just feel it, and we kind of captured it on video. So it was a really beautiful interview. And then from there, we got to go back and spend 4 days, like an intensive with Keith and Valda. Valda's Keith's wife, for anyone that doesn't know. And again, it's like it blew out of the water anything I thought I knew about the principles and opened me up again. And then at different times, we've gone out and filmed. Keith has then been over and done loads of retreats with us and events, spent time sort of staying with us. It just feels like family, really. And it's been amazing to learn from someone that had such a relationship with Sydney Banks and was there in the early days and kind of saw it go from being kind of an understanding on a tiny island to just exploding now across the world. So I feel really privileged to sort of to know Keith and have learnt from him and call him a friend, and to have him here now for 2 hours. I'm just looking forward to sort of sitting back, well, or walking around the house with headphones in, listening. So we've said that there'll be time for questions and things, but I've asked Keith maybe to introduce himself for newer people, and just sort of really the next couple of hours are his, and he can direct it.
Thank you, Jen. It's just an incredible pleasure to be here and keep reconnecting after these many years and experiences and knowledges opening up for all of us. Just to recap a little bit about my story, because I was I considered myself a very well-adjusted person, and I fell into a track of looking into psychology, and that track led me to complete a degree, and then everyone told me, well, if you really want to do anything with psychology, you have to get advanced degrees, and so I did that, and but something, in a way, something was kind of missing, or something was sort of out of. I didn't know what it was, but I could see it in my professors and in my classes and in myself. I could feel that there was something that I hadn't yet sorted. Um, and so I completed my doctorate, and I was still searching for that, a kind of a missing piece or something that wasn't really quite right. It was like, just something wasn't ordered right. Like if you had a puzzle, let's say a puzzle, and there was a missing piece, and that missing piece was kind of right in the center of it or something, and you were trying to, I hadn't really found that missing piece. And when um so I was looking, I was searching for what might that be. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for, but I was looking for something. And and there was a yearning in me, a kind of incompleteness, you might say. And I would meet people and have conversations with people, and people would talk about, I met people that had, I met a friend of mine who had a belief, a religious belief, and he tried to, convey that to me. And I tried sincerely to follow his lead, and but I never found it through that means. Other people might. I I didn't know, but sometimes I would meet people who seemed to think that they had found that missing ingredient, but as I watched their lives and how they conducted themselves and whatever, I was puzzled, because despite how strong their conviction was, it didn't seem to me to be that they were that loving or mentally healthy or content. So I kept searching, and just by really good fortune, I went to a conference in Austin, Texas, and there was a man there. His name was John Enright, and he could see that I was really pressing and trying to sort out what he had to offer, and he said, "Well, why don't you come to a more intense workshop that we're doing in Dallas," which was a couple of 100 miles from Austin. And he gave me the dates. And so I took my girlfriend with me, Valda, at the time. And we traveled to Dallas, and I attended this workshop. And during that workshop, he and his partner told a story about that they met an enlightened man. And I thought, well, what's that mean, an enlightened man? Like, I don't, it's intriguing. I've heard of enlightened people, but I'd never really met one. And so, and the thing about this enlightened man that they told the story about was that he said the past wasn't really the whole story. And I thought, well, wait a minute, like, all of my psychology has all been rooted in the past. My investigations, all the psychological books, all the Freudian books, all the people that I had studied with, were all rooted somehow, some way in the past. And that intrigued me. And so I found out this enlightened man's name, and he lived in British Columbia. And so I thought, well, these guys seem to have a relationship with this enlightened man. Maybe I could work with them and meet this enlightened man. And so I didn't even know his name. His name was Sydney Banks. And it was intriguing to me because he was a welder. And I thought, well, how would these two eminent psychologists find anything of value from this enlightened man? And so lo and behold, I went back to visit my girlfriend Valda, which later became my wife, and now she's been my wife for 45 years. I said, well, what do you think about moving to California? We were living in Texas, and she said, I'm game. Yeah, I could see. I said, I think there's something in this enlightened man's teachings, or something that might be the missing piece, the missing ingredient to my psychology and to my studies and to my wanting. I really wanted to help people, and I really wanted to. I felt incomplete. I feel like I was sort of there was something missing. There was some serious amount of guesswork in my psychology that I was discontent about. I didn't feel like I was doing guesswork rather than having something sorted that was accurate and true and logical. I was functioning according to an illogic. I didn't know what was missing, but I knew something was missing. And so lo and behold, within a few months, then I met this enlightened man, and his name was Sydney Banks. He was a welder, had been a welder, which was really fascinating. He wasn't a professional. He had to leave school when he was 13 years old and go to work on the railroad. Well, I had worked on the railroad coming through college, so there were just things about his story that intrigued me. But I thought, how could he have found what psychology was looking for? And he was talking about principles. And I know you all, as members here, have heard about the three principles. Well, he didn't have a book at that point. He didn't have any recordings. This was early days, but he told the story of how he found the secret to life. And I thought, well, I wonder if I could find the secret to life. And it might be the missing piece for me. And lo and behold, it was. So as he was talking, there was something so confident. He was so self-assured. He was, and he told the story of how he was, before he had this tremendous insight or enlightenment, he was insecure and reactive, and he felt that he got shortchanged in life, and that he wasn't really whole, complete. He wasn't. He was insecure, and he said that the insecurity is what plagues most of humanity. And I thought, well, that might speak to me. I don't feel like I've found what I'm looking for, and it does make me feel insecure. When he talked about these three principles, as I know you all are beginning to understand to one degree or another, he later published a little formula. And this formula was, he put this in boxes: mind plus consciousness plus thought equals reality. And a little piece of knowledge dropped into my head then. I thought, well, it's interesting that this welder would present a complete psychology by these principles. And I found something. I found a deeper confidence, and I thought, it started to make sense to me that there had to be a missing ingredient that people were missing. And Sid would say this. He would say everybody on earth is looking for the same answer. But it had been under-realized, and he said he later would write that everyone was looking for this answer and that it was hidden, and it was hidden in this formula of these three principles. So I thought, well, I'm going to study this and find out what's he talking about, because he had a psychology that wasn't incomplete. I could feel it from him. And what he said was, when he found this formula, he found wisdom. And I thought, well, I would like to find wisdom, and maybe I could, if I found wisdom, I could share it with people and they could find it too. And it would help them with this kind of chronic insecurity, that it was Thoreau that said, most men live lives of quiet desperation. And I thought, that's me. I have a quiet desperation inside of me. I have something that I don't know. Something doesn't make complete sense. And these principles before reality, and Sid would say they're formless. And if you put a form on them, you missed it. And I thought, well, I think maybe that's what all of my psychology professors have been missing, because I could see they were not, dare I say, they weren't really happy people. As I got to know them, I would find out their pathologies or their flaws. And Sidney Banks didn't seem to suffer any of those. He had a certain confidence and a security, a calm presence, and a wisdom. And he said that it came whenever he had this enlightenment experience. So here was a man walking around in a different understanding. He seemed to have found this missing ingredient, and I wanted to find it for myself. And so I thought, I'm going to listen to him and spend as much time as I could with him, and it might help me to be a better man, a better person, a better husband. Valda and I got married after we met Sydney Banks, and we've enjoyed a remarkable level of love and connection to this day. We kind of marvel at that, because we can see that many people don't have what we have, and we don't feel like we have it by good fortune or hard work or egotism. It was a blessing. It was we found each other. We found a connection with each other that was spiritual. And Valda was a particularly helpful person to me, because before I ever met her, the friend that introduced me to her said that she was the happiest person he had ever met. And when I met her, I found something in her, in the way she conducted herself and experienced life, that spoke to me, because she was really secure, and she was really logical. She had a logic in her. And that's what I found in these principles. I found a complete psychology. I found these three principles: mind plus consciousness plus thought equaling reality, made sense. And when it made sense as a kind of cosmic formula that brought together the spiritual and the psychological. Now, in psychology, they had the idea, wrongly, that if you wanted to study spirituality, you have to go to the religion department, which was across campus. We don't deal with that. That's we leave that to the theologians or to the belief systems of people. We just deal with the psychological. Well, that's what was missing. It wasn't a complete psychology. It was an incomplete psychology. It was a psychology that wasn't ultimately logical. It was based on guesswork. So they would posit, well, maybe this happened. What happened to this person had to do with their past. Did they have a traumatic past? Or maybe they have a personality disorder, and they diagnosed illnesses. But what Sydney Banks was talking about was a completely other dimension. He found a complete dimension that illuminated the fact, for example, that mind is not brain. Well, that was really challenge. That was confrontational for me. I had always assumed that mind was brain, that the physical and mind were the same thing. But he said, no. He said, mind is not a thing, and it's not a thought. Again, going back to this formlessness. And when he said that, then he went on to say that mind is a force that acts as a catalyst. And if you know anything about catalysts, they're interesting. That was an interesting word to me, like catalyst. So a catalyst is something that you put together with something, and it changes it. It makes it like, for example, once I went to the hardware store, and the person said, I said, I need some really good glue, because I got a really difficult thing that broke, and I have to get it back together. in order for this to work right. And he said, "Oh, we've got the best glue in the world." I said, "Well, sell it to me. Show me." So he handed me this little thing in a cardboard with a cardboard back on it, and it had it was kind of 2 packets. And he said, one is the glue, and the other is the catalyst. And I said, "This is a glue? Like, I've never seen a glue like this." He says, "Believe me, it's the best glue we've got." He says, "You snip off a little corner." He says, you snip off a little corner of the catalyst, and you snip off a little corner of the packet of the glue, and you, or rather, I shouldn't have said it that way. There was a membrane separating this catalyst from the glue, and you break that membrane and you mix up that packet. Then you snip off the corner and you that's the glue. And so that's what I did. And by golly, it worked really great. So I thought a catalyst acts on something and creates something really different fundamentally. But there's a logic to how a catalyst would work, how the psyche would work on my thought to create my experience. Lo and behold, I think this is the missing formula. This is the missing truth that I've needed my whole life. And it brought together the spiritual world of the formless and the reality of the form. And it married the two. And that marriage really comforted me tremendously. It was like I had found the secret to life. And it healed me. It healed this deep ache, this deep kind of anxiety or depression or incompleteness, this dissatisfaction. All the pathologies, large or small, that I had were
Erica B or Erica Bugby
were made, excuse me, my video, I lost my video for a second. I'm going to get it back here. There you go. So I found my happiness through this complete psychology. I couldn't believe it. I just felt so deeply satisfied. And you know what else? It helped me to be a better man. It helped me to be a better partner. It allowed me to listen and to love and to give and to have an experience of the moment that wasn't excuse me, I'm having a little bit of trouble here. So I want to find Zoom again. Uh-oh. Can you still hear me, David?
Yeah, mate. Yeah, we can hear you. We can see you. We can see you looking confused at your screen.
All right. Well, I can't see anybody. There you are. Okay. So, it was like my search was over. I quit searching and I started enjoying my life on a completely new level. Like at that point in our relationship, for example, Valda and I would watch nature shows, and my God, the intelligence and the wisdom of the animal kingdom. And I could see intelligence everywhere I went, the intelligence in the trees and the plants and the atmosphere. And it was like it all came together, and I felt a part of life rather than kind of permanently, inexplicably separate from it. And I realized I didn't have this logical formula before. And finding this logical formula satisfied me so deeply, so completely, that I was, you might say it brought me home to myself. I found myself in these principles, and it completed my search. And since then, I've been talking about this. I can't seem to quit talking about it, because it seems to me it brings something to people that they, like me, didn't know they were missing something. But there's a divine order to life, and it includes the spiritual and the psychological, and that this was the missing formula that all the sciences, all the scientists, all the astronomers, there were balloons that went up. I have those engineered by Zoom. When I get into insights, the balloons go up. I'm kidding. I have no idea why that happens, but
I'm glad you've got an explanation for it.
Well, actually, I have no explanation for it, but it's true. I see them.
When I
And
put the thumb up, it sometimes does a thumb as well. It's the new AI stuff, isn't it?
that sounds good to me. But this sounded so good to me. It sounded so good that I couldn't believe it. And I've been qualitatively happy and happier. And one of the things, just for example, that allowed me to do was, like somebody asked me once, does this mean that you're always happy? And I thought, well, no, not really, because I could get a thought or a mood or a reaction, or something can happen to me that I go down a level or a few levels of consciousness. And but this is where the formula comes in. This is where things get back in their place. When I realize that they get back in their place, I go up again. And here's the thing. I don't take with me any memory of negativity or blame or pointing the finger at whoever might have hurt my feelings. I had this, so often had hurt feelings. But it cured these principles cured me of that, because I would realize, oh, I've dropped down a few levels, and I would get back to where I belong. Things would get back in place. And when that would happen, I would take no memory with me of what they did to me or what they how they failed me, or how they hurt me, or how traumatized I was, or how hurt I was, or how troubled I was, how disturbing I was, because that blame was now accounted for by levels of consciousness. And I could see, nor would I take any negative memory toward myself. Because I realized that's just what you get when you drop a few levels. You get into a personalization and you get into an illogic. And you get the logic straight, the formula sorts it for you. You don't have to do the formula of reality, and how it works is not your formula. It's reality's formula. It's God's psychology. It's divine, the divine nature of our mental functioning. Our mental functioning has a divine logic to it. And you can't, that will be true. That is true forever. You don't have to make that, you don't even have to believe it. It's just true anyway. And that really was so comforting to me. It took so much off my back of trying to fix myself or fix other people. And I began to enjoy a way of being and working with other people that was so soft and so loving and so respectful and so full of love. I couldn't believe it. And it really, this logic will sort out life for anyone. It's not my logic. You see, these principles are not, don't belong to you or me. They're a complete explanation for the way reality works. And there's something so miraculously beautiful about that. You realize that's what's missing in the world today, because the world today has so many problems and insecurities and ways of acting out and accusing people, and there's issues between the Tories and the Democrats, or the Republicans and the Democrats, or the white people and dark people. So it cures racism. It cures all of these alienations, all these different judgmentalisms that the people of the earth are tortured by. And it makes them feel alienated from each other, or alienated from even themselves. The people don't have a deep level of mental health. And then I remembered that when Sid found this answer, he thought, well, oh my goodness, this is the answer. This is the answer everybody's looking for. And who do I know? Because he lived on this tiny little island, 15 miles by 5 miles, not very big. And he thought, I've got to get this off island. And who do I know? Oh, and then he thought, the churches. There were 2 churches on the island. And I'll go to the pastor of each church, and I'll explain to him what I found, this formula, these principles and how they miraculously changed me. And I'll explain it to them. And then because those two folks have a bishop who's off island, and so they could be the carriers of the wisdom, and they would go over to their bishop and say, let me tell you how this works. And the bishop would go, oh my goodness, I'll have to tell the archbishop, because there's a chain of command, you might say, and we'll pass it along. And then Sid thought, isn't this the sweetest thought that I'd ever heard? He thought, one will tell the other, and 6 weeks, there'll be peace on earth. Now that was 1973, so that was 50 years ago. Still no peace on earth, right? That's obvious. There's atrocities and wars and negativities and judgments and racism and poverty. And I mean, we're infected with mental illness. It's an epidemic. So here we are, but we've got something we didn't have before. We've got the logic. And the logic can't be destroyed. It can be hidden. But if you bring it out and show people the logic there, and they see it insightfully, it heals them. And they become more and more and more and more content and happier. And they worry less, and they judge less, and they get lost less. And if that ever happens to them, they can easily recover, because they know, oh, I must have used the logic in an improper way. Because everybody knows if you have a formula and you jumble it, and you get a result that is wrong or doesn't work, it fails, and if you put it back in its place, so these principles allow humanity to put things back in their proper place. That's no big deal. But then again, getting the logic in its proper place solves the riddle. It solves problems that you don't even know you've got. It solves suffering needlessly, which again is the diagnosis, if you will, of the world today we live in. The world today we live in is a world of suffering needlessly. And we have the answer to that. It's not my answer, it's everyone's answer, everybody's answer. And the beautiful thing about Sydney Banks is he knew that too. He knew it, and he wanted to give it away. He wanted nothing more than to give it away, because he knew it wasn't his. The answer, and psychology now can take its proper place. Like I had heard when I studied psychology that psychology could be the mother of all science. And lo and behold, that's exactly what the fathers of psychology were positing. And now we know why they were positing it. They didn't know, like William James, who was known as the father of American psychology, said, psychology is missing principles. And I don't know what they are. And if we ever find principles, it'll be the greatest discovery for humanity since the beginning of time. And that's exactly what Sydney Banks said. So Sydney Banks, William James knew there was something missing. Sydney Banks found it and had something to offer William James, but it was 61 years after William James wrote that eloquent piece. And one of the things he said was, come they someday surely will. Somehow, some way, this has all got to fit together. Life has to fit together. I don't know what the missing piece is. 61 years after he wrote that, Sydney Banks found it. And now here we're all continuing to share that logic. So that's my long-winded introduction to my life and my discoveries and the mental health that I have found, and I hope with all my heart that everyone can find it. And it's an insight about these invisible principles. Invisible, they're spiritual principles, but they complete the formula of reality. So let's stop and answer questions.
Thanks, Keith. It's nice to hear your voice again, mate.
Nice, so nice to talk with you. It's been too long.
I didn't get a chance to ask how's Valda.
Well, Valda's really doing amazingly well. She, many people don't know, but we, 2.5 years ago, suddenly there was something, she couldn't properly stand, or, and she'd had a stroke, and we didn't know it. I didn't know it. And you would think I being, I would have noticed this, but I didn't notice it in time. And so then she went to the hospital, and she's been in the hospital ever since. But fortunately for her and for me, it was on her motor side. And so it affected her left side of her body, but not her ability to talk or think or relate. And she's been a teacher of the principles with me for 45 years. And so we have created many programs, et cetera, met folks like Jenny and thousands of other people through our careers. And she goes to this hospital, but she's and then a nursing home. She went from the hospital to a nursing home, and we're soon going to be bringing her back home again.
Wonderful. We've
got the ramps and the ways to lift her body up, because she can't walk, but she can talk. And so she's right here with us, and she's the people have remarked that that she's the happiest person in the nursing home, and she is even happier than the staff. But it's because of these principles. And one of her famous things that she said, because again, she was logical before the principles, and she used the logic of the principles to really help her. And one of the things she said, there's many things she said that made me laugh, but one of the things was, these principles make me behave. And that made me laugh, because I thought, it's sort of like, well, that's a funny way to put it, but behavior being an effect of the way we conduct ourselves according to our use of these principles, of course would make one behave. And so she's found a kind of cosmic self-correction and a cosmic deepening of her own love in life and her own beauty. And it's really helped her to be a better and better. It's helped her to continue to be happier and more logical. So she's doing rather exceedingly well.
Send a love from all us lot, will you? We're all sending a love, and we're all sending you love as well, Keith.
Thank you.
Bless you, buddy. You know, it's interesting. I'm not on Facebook, but every now and again I get to hear of people coming in and stirring up the Three Principles community and saying they found something greater than the principles. The principles don't work. The principles, they're not effective. And it's such an interesting statement when I start to hear that, and I hear people bringing in ideas of better than the principles. And yeah, I'm not knocking anybody at this point. Please don't think of that. I'm knocking anybody at this point, because I'm really not. But I find it so fascinating, because what Sid did bring was a complete science. As much as a spiritual conversation, it's a scientific conversation. It is where the two meet, and they were never separated. And any approach that ever comes into this world is always going to be thought into existence. And it was just as you were speaking, you were talking about this conversation about better approaches. They're just like, they're totally different conversations. Like what Sid brought was the fabric, the kind of the underlying, the pre-existing primordial truth of reality and life, and then we just make up stories from that point onwards. I'm not really articulating very well what I'm trying to say, but it's just I think trying to help people see beyond the words to the absolute fundamental magnitude of the point that was actually birthed into the world. And yeah, I loved everything that you had to say there, Keith. It was beautiful. It really, really was lovely. Let's open this up for questions, reflections. Is Keith Noyes still there? Somebody's dropped off. Questions, reflections, observations. Has anybody got any questions for Keith?
I can hear somebody talking.
No, well, is it Jenny in the background? Could be Jenny in the background. She's got Lucia.
Speak up, Jenny.
That's
or whoever you are.
my sister. That's my sister's laugh. You know, it's interesting, Keith. I was diagnosed with chemical imbalances of the brain, and I don't know about how much you studied that as in your psychology, but I remember trusting those people because I had nothing else to base it on, no other kind of nothing else to go off. So you just trust the experts. And I remember the day I woke up to my realization about what Sid was pointing to and seeing the fallacy of that point.
Mm.
You know, I was told that I was my brain was malfunctioning, and the cause of my depression was my anger was I had too much adrenaline and too much cortisol in my system, which when they took my blood samples, I could wholeheartedly believe was true. I was a very angry man. So it would make sense that I would have an awful lot of adrenaline and cortisol. And I was told that this was the root cause of my depression and anger, and that they could give me medicine that would, I don't know if it was to stop those glands or whatever, that part of my brain from producing those chemicals. I don't know quite how it worked, but they could give me medicine to quench it effectively. And I remember when I woke up and I realized the power of thought, the power of consciousness, the power of mind, what it was pointing to, and realizing that their assumption about my chemical imbalances were actually a consequence rather than a cause. They were secondary. My adrenaline, my cortisol, my chemical imbalance, which, like I say, I probably did have an awful lot of adrenaline, cortisol in my blood system, wasn't the cause of my depression. It wasn't something random kicking off in my body. It was an absolutely direct effect of the way I used my mind. It was a direct reflection of what I was thinking. And I was thinking very, very violent thought at the time, a very, very angry, disappointed in life thought, which naturally, when we think terrible things, aggressive things, or we think scary things, what does our body do? It produces adrenaline, it produces cortisol, stress hormones and whatnot. I remember that dropping into place. Oh, I haven't got a chemical imbalance. I've got a misunderstanding problem. The initial thing, the cause, they were studying, like I say, they were studying the effect, thinking it was the cause. But in actual fact, the cause was thought. The way I was thinking, which naturally then, if I think beautiful thoughts, if I think beautiful things, I release all the wonderful chemicals. And if I think harrowing thoughts and aggressive thoughts, I release all the not so wonderful chemicals. I just remember looking at how backwards psychiatry and psychology had things, and things that I could reflect back then and look at all the things I was told. I was told my anger was caused by my grandfather's death at the age of 3. And it wasn't. Even back then, I remember thinking to myself, that makes no sense. To come across what Sid had to say and the logic and the simplicity and the 100%, as you call it, the 100% nature of it. Like it was like the keystone in the bridge. It just held the whole thing together. It's like, right, that's it. That's it. Leslie has just said, I'm a relative newcomer. Love the presentation. Could Keith maybe say a bit more about mind plus consciousness plus thought equals reality? Thank you. This is Leslie.
Yeah. Should I respond?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Well, yeah, if you see, if you have like Dave is mentioning, and he had been told that uh, in medicine, because the doctors themselves are searching to put things together, and they put brain in the formula. So now again, Sid, thank God, finding this complete formula and that mind is not brain, that mind acts as a catalyst and turns thought into the, whether conscious or unconscious. It's not like you have to have the right thought, but if you know what's happening to you, which Dave did not know by his own admission, and other people were saying it's your brain, and he knew nothing other than to go with that illogic, because the doctors were using that illogic. That was and when I say logic, it's not a body of doctrine. It's not like, okay, the three principles psychology is a body of doctrine. I've got to believe in it. No, it's not a body of doctrine. It's truth. You don't have to believe in it. You just see that it's the truth. It's just a simple, logical formula that brings it all together. But if you put brain in there, you're distorting the formula, because don't forget, mind plus consciousness plus thought equals reality. You could put another word for reality. You could put experience, or you could put you could even put body. Mind plus consciousness plus thought equals body. You could, now that would, but if you put body into another formula, and you have that formula is illogical or incomplete or without cosmic logic, the principle of mind plus consciousness plus thought is a cosmic logic. There's a logic to the cosmos. Like one time I asked, well, Sid and I had this little private conversation once, and he said, "Do you know what the universe is made of?" And so I thought to myself, yeah, I know what the universe is made of. It's because I'd seen countless, it's all over programs everywhere of this vastness of the universe, the nebula and the stars. And every time we get a more powerful telescope, we find more galaxies and more things that we didn't know existed. Now there they are. And so and all of us have seen these programs, and they always had left me a little bit kind of feeling small, really, and feeling in a negative way. Now you can feel small without feeling, you can, it's the feeling of being small in the face of this grandeur of space. But I felt small, like insecure small, negative small, if you will. And so when Sid asked me this question, I thought, this is in my own little brain, I thought, I'm not going to say the universe is made of suns and planets and stars and galaxies. Because I know, having had many countless conversations with him, I knew he was smiling at me, and he had a kind of twinkle in his eye, and I thought, I'm going to ask him what the universe is made of. And you know what he said? He said, knowledge. And that was such again, a wise answer. Not a body of doctrine. It wasn't like he was telling me that he believed that. He knew that. And I felt that he knew that. And I felt comforted by his answer, because it integrated me in this grand body of knowledge, this grand body of intelligence of the universe. And I felt, and it disappeared, because one of the things that he wrote in The Missing Link, which was one of the 6 books that he published while he was alive, and he has some more that have remained unpublished to date, including one that he gave me. His last book he was working on, he gave me. And Valda and I have titled that book Suffering Needlessly. And based on what I said earlier, you can see why we would take aim at that, because there is so much suffering needlessly because people don't have the complete formula. And if they got the complete formula, the needlessness of the suffering would automatically disappear, as it did for me. So I lost my trail of thought I was following here. So this logic is not a body of doctrine. It's not a belief system. It's a fact. Just like Dave said, a scientific fact, a truthful fact. It's a simple fact. It doesn't take a genius to realize it. It's right in front of us all the time. It's the working body of knowledge of existence. And you don't have to defend it. You don't even have to prove it. It's already there. You just realize it. So when, like Dave was saying, when people argue that it's not complete enough, you've got to add something to it or whatever. No, you don't. You don't. You just don't understand its simple truth. It's a simple truth. And one of the things that William James said, he said he just hoped to God, when these principles were found, that they were embraceable and understandable at such a simple elementary level that it would just calm the world down. It would heal the world, not by convincing, but by its own. It would bring it together. For example, before Copernicus, just as an example, before Copernicus, we thought that we were the center of the solar system, and the Earth, the sun, was a planet. So you look at those diagrams of the solar system before Copernicus, the sun was the 3rd planet out. There was Mercury, and Saturn, and then, I believe, and then the sun. Well, Copernicus flipped it. He said, that doesn't make sense, because And we now know, for example, if we have a rocket ship even today, and if we believed even today that the sun was a planet and that the sun was orbiting the earth, which it never was, it looked like it would, because if it comes up in the east, it goes down in the west. You can see why everyone assumed that for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Even the Bible talked about the sun as if it were a planet. Copernicus said no, but he said it very carefully because he knew it was heresy to the church. And the church, even 75 years after Copernicus proved the mathematics of a sun-centered solar system, not an earth-centered one, that the earth-centered one, the earth-centered solar system was a fiction. Well, the church banned that teaching and burned people at the stake for teaching it. So Copernicus was very careful, and Galileo, who was a student of Copernicus, he was placed under house arrest for the rest of his life because he thought, well, this makes sense. It was logical. They found the logical order of how the solar system was actually existing. Without that, as I was about to say, today, if you didn't know that the Earth was not the center of the solar system, and you were trying to send a rocket ship to the moon, you would never be able to hit the moon with a rocket ship because you have the wrong formula. You have the wrong solar system. You have a solar system that doesn't exist, and you're operating as if it did, and you're sending a rocket ship out. You're going to send the rocket. You're going to send the rocket ship here, and the moon is going to be over here, because you don't have the right formula. That's just common sense. You get the right orientation, the right order, then you're going to hit your target. And the target for psychology is this order, this divine order of logic, of mind plus thought plus consciousness equals reality. You have that complete formula. You have to see a world of order and sense and beauty and logic and grandeur that is not, that you're not at odds with, but one that you're one with, and you're completed by. And you are the dead center of. You are the dead center of that universe. And wow, then you're home, and you're free, and your mind will quiet down of its theories of how it doesn't work. And all these theories about how it doesn't work now plague humanity. We are inundated with information, but lies, cosmic lies, not because they know the truth and so they're going to weave a lie, but the basis of them is an incomplete formula. The formula gets complete, the lies and all these insecurities that they perpetrate will fall away from the entertainment of humanity. So we won't be frightened by the, like as a child, you might get frightened by an image you see on a screen of Godzilla or whatever, and you think Godzilla's gonna come and destroy your country or whatever. You realize, oh, that's just fiction. They're just depicting these monsters with these tricks of photography, etc. Isn't that fun? You can enjoy it without being freaked out by it. But with the, how it is sometimes with a child, they get freaked out about images, and you have to kind of talk them down and explain to them, look, sweetie, that was just a movie. Well, getting the logic again back in place, it takes the fear out. And one of the things that Sydney Banks wrote that I just recently discovered was that when one realizes self, and when I say self, I don't mean an image of self-importance, that's ego. But I mean, if you see who you truly are, when one realizes self, Sydney Banks wrote this, when one realizes self, there is a complete collapse of conditioning. So all these conditioning lies that you've got to be for example, you've got to be the right weight, or you've got to be the right race. You've got to be the right intelligence. You've got to be the right image that society believes, or somebody believes, or maybe you believe. And if you're not that, then you're flawed. Well, all of those conditions, and that's why they call it conditioning, there is a complete collapse of conditioning. When one realizes self, there is a complete collapse of conditioning. You find how that makes sense to you. Your problems must disappear. They are just conditioning. They're just things that you've thought you came up with that were wrong with you or wrong with life. And they're just, they dissolve, they collapse, they're made a moot. They no longer have any meaning. And when I've worked with people, and I've, like I had a deaf man that I worked with once, and he had a collection of ill feelings that he wasn't, that other people were clued into something that he was not clued into, and he could see that they looked askance at him because he was completely deaf, and he had hearing. He had to have brain surgeries to help complete his hearing. So he felt forever alienated and shortchanged. And as we worked together, he realized that that was in his thinking. It wasn't when he realized self.
Stan Leslie or Stan Miller.
He, excuse that ring. I'm sorry. It'll quit in a moment. He realized that he was not incomplete. Fundamentally, there was nothing wrong with him. And famously, too, that's what Sydney Banks, when he realized that he wasn't insecure, that he just thought he was insecure, he went back to the hotel room with his wife. He was at it. He was having dinner with someone, and someone said that to him and said, "Sid, you're not insecure. You just think you're insecure." And the truth of that hit him so profoundly. He went back to the hotel room with his wife, who was at the same dinner table. She didn't hear the same thing, but Sid heard it, and he said to his wife, "Isn't this great, Pat? We don't have any problems." And his wife said, she said, "Well, your problems may be thought, but my problems are real." And it really upset her that her husband was saying that they didn't have any problems, that we didn't have any problems, that they were gone. There had been this collapse of his conditioning, and he realized the truth of life. And she, not realizing that, it upset her, and it frightened her. She thought, "Who's my husband? Why is he saying these strange things?" And so she felt negatively. And he thought, well, there's no need to really press this. He felt like he had all the time in the world to explain this to her. And she could not, she said, "I couldn't get a rise out of him like I used to. Like when I would get upset about things, uh, he would just talk to me." And then a couple of days later, he overhears, she's arranging some flowers in the kitchen, and he overhears her, and she goes, "Oh," and he goes into the kitchen where she's arranging these flowers, and he says, "What, Pat?" And she says, "Well, I just realized the truth of something that you were saying the other day, and it's really true." Now she, in effect, you could say she found that divine formula. And when she did, it tickled her, and it delighted her, and it made her kind of squeal with delight. And he said to her, "That's it, Pet. You found your way. You're tracking the truth of life, and you're on your way. You found your you found your insight. You found truth, and the whole world is going to open up to you now. A whole new world will begin to open up to you, and such as it is, it was exactly the same thing for me. It will be exactly the same thing for any of you. You see the truth of life. It opens a door, a dimension, a complete formula that will end your search and end your incompleteness and your judgmentalism and your looking for that answer. If you haven't found it yet, keep listening here, because again, it's not our answer, it's the answer. And everyone deserves a life of truth. Everyone is a thought away from that light of truth. And that's as far as you can get away from it. It's just one thought that will complete the puzzle. And then you can relax and start to smile and be satisfied and be content and be full of more and more and more love and understanding, and live back in the place of where you belong. You belong, you belong here. You belong to life. You're not separate from it. You really aren't. And there's nothing to fear. There's nothing to fear. And so you can, now, somebody asked me once, well, what about if someone is trying to kill you? Shouldn't you feel fear? And I said, well, that's not that fear, that's intelligence. And if you take action if someone is trying to threaten your life, that's wisdom. That's not a problem. That's just intelligence showing you to take care of yourself, to be careful, to understand that this threat is happening, and you take measures. That's wisdom. That's not a problem. That's wisdom occurring through the intelligence that you have that's alerting you to a threat or a risk. Nothing to be afraid of. Nothing to cause panic or insecurity. The psychological dysfunctions of people is you can now envision a future for our children or our children's 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 of a world without needless suffering. Wow. Wouldn't that be something? We would still have commerce, and we would still have economic force, things. We would still be able to work. It doesn't mean that we wouldn't, but we would live without needless suffering. The needless suffering. Can you imagine a world without needless suffering? I can. Then I wish it for everybody. And that's my work.
Thanks for that, Keith. I was speaking to a client the other day, a young lad, and I said to him, I don't know, it just came to me to say him at the time. And as I said it, I heard the truth in it. I said, do you know what the greatest fear that blights human beings is? That blights humanity? And he said, no, what? Death? And I said, no. Loss was his next answer. I said, no. I said, how we will feel. The thought of how we will feel. Like, we're so afraid of how we will feel. How I will feel if this happens, how I will feel if that happens. We're so afraid of feelings. And it's because we haven't had that complete picture. We haven't had that complete equation. We've ended up in this situation where humanity is, as human beings, we've got tangled up in our stories about feelings because we haven't had that complete equation. Got feelings of being something that they weren't. And I think it's something you and Valda really highlighted was thought creates feeling. Thought creates feeling. I know Sid was the one who pointed it out to you, but you've really highlighted it. And when we do start to realize that this is a complete equation, our feelings that we do experience are coming from our perception in any given moment of that circumstance, whatever the circumstance be, the person, the future, the past, whatever that be. And we realize that it is ultimately coming from thought. It's like you say, there's nothing to be afraid of. And that is one of the greatest gifts anybody can receive, is the realization they don't have to be afraid of life. My sister, she receives messages, and she wrote this piece and on why you don't need to fear life, and it's wonderful. I'll share it during this retreat. But going back to the man who was saying about, what about somebody attacking you? I remember being out in South Africa. Forgive me, anybody who's heard this story, but I've been out in South Africa with Jen, and I was walking through the CBD of Cape Town, I'd left me wallet in the car, and we'd been for a meal and we couldn't pay for it because we didn't have any money. So Jenny had to stay in the restaurant. The Thai lady held Jenny in the restaurant and wouldn't let her leave as compensation. And I was walking through the CBD of Cape Town, where you're not supposed to walk. They say don't walk through there, but I didn't have any choice. And I noticed this man on the other side of the road come across. There was only me and him on the street. I kept my eye on him, and he came up alongside me and he went, "Give me your money." And I said, "Sorry, mate." I said, "You've picked a really crap time to try and rob me." I said, "I haven't got any money." And I was dressed in my really smart stuff. I've been working in this charity. And he looked me up and down and went, "Don't be stupid. Look at you. Of course you've got money. Give me your money. Do not make me rob you." And it was the weirdest thing. I'd grown up like as a hard man. And I always hoped that one day somebody would try and rob me so I could beat them up, because I was so angry with life. And I would have loved this opportunity a few years before to have presented itself, so I could have unleashed a lot of fury and released a lot of stress on this man. And God knows what that would have ended up like. I hate to think, but thankfully I'd come across Sid in the meantime. And it was such an interesting thing that happened. And I don't advocate this as a way to handle anything, but I just carried on walking with this man next to me, and I just put my arm around him. And I looked him in the eye, and I just asked him his name. And he told me his name. His name was Alex. And I introduced myself. And I just kept him. I just put my arm around him. And I just felt love towards this man. And within a minute, we were back at the car, and I felt comfortable enough in myself that this was an all right situation. I said, "Get in the car." And now he was the one on the back foot, like he was the one who was a bit nervous. And I'm like, "No, please get in the car." And I drove up and I got chatting to Alex, and I fell in love with this fella. He just got out of prison. I told him I'd been to prison, and he was astounded because I was white, and he couldn't get work because of his criminal record, and he'd had a kid since he'd come out of prison. And long story short, I ended up buying him some bits and pieces from this shop, and all he wanted was like tea bags and nappies and some biscuits. I remember running him home outside of Cape Town. Jenny went mad because I was talking to her for 40 minutes and I'd forgotten about her and left her in the restaurant. I ran him up the side of Table Mountain, and he told me to stop, and where he told me to stop, there was no houses, but he lived in a tarpaulin, and his girlfriend was a prostitute. We picked her up on the way, and I remember being so grateful that I wasn't engulfed in fear. One, I didn't fear this situation. I don't know. If I was to say, I could say I can't explain why I did what I did. It was just the only thing that made sense in that moment. There was no, what should I do? It was just a movement towards love this man. And I remember then thinking to myself I said to him, "Can I come and see your house?" And he said, "No." He laughed at me as he said, he went, "No, you're not safe in there." And when I looked, there was other little tents, and he said, "Come with me." It was on 2 tiers was this field, and he took me halfway into the first tier, and with that, a group of men stood up and started walking towards me, and he just said, "Dave, you've got to go now. You have to go now." And we had this big hug, and I walked really fast back to the car, and one of these men caught me up. He was carrying a banana skin, and he made some joke about how he could have slipped on it as he was coming to see me and stuff. But I remember driving away from that. I'm so grateful for that experience of meeting Alex. I've been so grateful to have not been engulfed in fear like I would have imagined I may have been. And I was so grateful that I didn't hurt a man who just had a baby. I didn't hurt a man who lived in a tarpaulin and was desperate. And likewise, I was so grateful that I didn't get stabbed or beaten the hell out of, I don't know. But it's really interesting when you start to come across this that conditioning, like you've been describing, you don't, most of the time, you don't even notice you've lost the conditioning until you're presented with a circumstance where, more often than not, and this is what I tend to find in a lot of people that come across this and that we work with, that they go, do you know what, in that circumstance, I just behaved different. In that, I've got a lad on community group at the moment who's saying, you know, the lady who just does my head in at work, we're actually WhatsApp mates now. She's actually really interesting. She's really sweet. We're really getting on really, really well. And it's such an interesting thing when that conditioning starts to fall apart. Like what you're then left with, because you're not left with a void. And I think that's one of the things that people are very, very afraid of. Who am I without this? Who am I without the label? Who am I without this behavior? Who am I without the addiction? Who am I without the bad temper? Who am I without depression even? I know that was a scary concept for me, but who am I without depression? Should I really lose it? But to realize there is no vacuum, there's no void, it's filled with something else, which is going to be more beautiful the more we embrace this realization. Yeah, it's exciting to know that you've got this for life and it's only going to grow. And whatever life presents you with is an opportunity for it to show itself more. Yeah. Not even death. Right, we've got Keith for 20 more minutes. Has anybody got any questions for him?
Thank you for that.
Welcome, Ema.
Hey, yeah.
Ema, have you got any questions for Keith? I know you just clicked on. Thought I'd put you on the spot.
I have a question.
Myra, go for it, love.
Hi. Yes. So what do you guys recommend if you're dealing with somebody you really care about who is just buried in their conditioning, just so buried, has been kind of exposed to this work, gets it, and then just gets buried again and just keeps getting buried and keeps getting buried? Like, what do? Do you just let them go? Do you keep coming back around every so often? Like, how do you handle that?
No, I think just pertaining to the example that Dave just gave us there, there must have been some moment when the person confronted him and threatened him and wanted to rob him. That fortunately for Dave and for this person and for their experience together, wisdom guided him, and he didn't, as Dave described the story, he didn't go to fear and panic and threat and anger and self-defense and hurting this man. And now, again, I'm not, and Dave said this, he said, I'm not recommending this as the ultimate way to deal with such circumstance, but he knew something within his own wisdom that prompted him to put his arm around him and to walk with him and to continue to relate to him in a way that surprised Dave. And as he tells it, you heard him say that. It surprised me that I didn't go to all of my training or my conditioning or my knowledge of karate or whatever. He kind of surprised himself. And wisdom has that kind of newness for us in the moment. It has a way, it has an intelligence. There's an intelligence in the moment available for us and available for you, Myra, that you cannot don't be afraid that it's not there. You know, it is there, and it is beyond your conditioning. And you follow that, and it keeps step by step kind of revealing things. So you're the revelation of the wisdom of the moment is in Dave's story, isn't it? Like it kept, you hear him sort of being surprised that he took him back to his car, and that he convinced the man to get in the car with him. And the man must have thought, is this person going to hurt me or take advantage of me? But there was something in the way that he was behaving, Dave was behaving towards him, that diffused the situation and was revealing even to the thief. And the wisdom of the moment is so available to you, Myra, and that's what we're grateful for. We're grateful for the wisdom of the moment, of the truth of life serving us. And surprisingly, the future, Dave didn't say this, but one of the implications that my wife and I put together, one of the ways to say, again, what his story told was that the future is an incomplete equation. And when you're in the moment and you're in the now, you don't know. There's a lot you don't know, but you don't have to. It's okay, because you're learning, and there's revelations there. That's wisdom, and that will work for you, Myra. Now the wisdom might be, I don't know what the wisdom is. The wisdom might be, well, leave this person alone right now. Or the wisdom might be, leave this person alone now and into the future. Even it might be that you know that this is not the right, there's nothing to do but just to let this, how they say, let the sleeping dog lie, right? So it might be that. I don't know what that is, but there is wisdom in this complete equation that's not a cosmic lie, that we are all, that is accessible to us, and without fear. It opens up doors, and continues to open up doors for you, Myra. It's revelatory for you. Like Dave's story was revelatory to him, wasn't it? Like he didn't know. you hear him talk about it. He kind of surprised himself that he would put his arm around this man and walk with him. But the revelatory nature of wisdom is that it just keeps going on. It keeps the wisdom of the moment keeps unfolding and revealing and providing solace and safety in a way that is wonderful for all of us, always. And you can know that that's the case, and then you see how it happens. You know, you see where do we go from here? Like you don't have to know, and you don't have to be afraid. You can be intelligent. You can be wise, and you'll be safe, which is an incredible proposition for the future. And the future is an incomplete equation for all of us. And that's one of the things that Sydney Banks, by the way, too, which we would all recommend listening to recordings and programs and reading the books of Sydney Banks, because he knew that the now had to be included. You know, he knew that, and he said that any person talking about the principles that doesn't include the now doesn't know what they're talking about. And that'll help you to know if someone isn't talking about the now, know that they're not capable of talking about the principles, because the now and the another way to say that, the future is an incomplete equation. There's something about the truth of that that's in this complete formula that without that, you're being misinformed. And so look back to the now. Those are clues. Those are helpful references to the truth of life. The truth of life isn't in the not now. That's a very comforting thing to embrace and understand, and slow your mind down to get it in, to get your thinking in sync with mind, consciousness, thought. You find that synchronicity, you must find calm, or you must find mental health. You find a beauty, you know, it's there. But when you begin to synchronize with it, it brings something to you that you need in the moment. And that Dave's story illuminates that. He found something that he needed in putting his arm around this attacker and talking with him, and then bringing him into his world, you know, and out of his feeling of, evidently, of desperation or of thievery or jealousy, that this man had money and he needed it, and he had to give it to him. And then this man gave him things, and bought him things and cared for him in a way that disarmed him, you know, in a way that helped him. This man that he was going to rob and steal from helped him. And again, not as a behavioral recommendation, as Dave so wisely pointed out, but he just said, I don't know what, you could tell that he was kind of humbled by what he did and how he went about it. It was, and all these stories then of wisdom, examples, you know, make sense to us again. Like sorry, I'm trying to get my vision of Dave back again. Can you can still hear me, Dave, correctly? Correct? I hope I haven't lost everybody.
Oh, no, you're good. You're
okay.
Good.
There you
No,
are.
we can hear you.
Okay, great. I'm sorry. So, I mean, you know, these stories, like I remember there's a story about a rabbi that lived in a village, and he was very poor, and somewhere along the line, someone had gifted this rabbi this precious bottle of wine. And so he kept it in the cellar. And he thought, this is so special. I'll keep it. So these bandits came into the town, and they were roughing everybody up and beating them up. And they said, where's the rabbi? We're going to beat the rabbi up. So people trembled, and they said, well, he's down at the edge of the town. He lives in this little place there. And so they directed the bandits to this place, and the bandits bang on the door and barge in and rough up the rabbi. And they say, they threaten him, and we're going to kill you. And the rabbi, fortunately, being unconcerned about the loss of his life and unthreatened by that. And the rabbi says, surprisingly, to these bandits, he says, I've been saving a bottle of wine for just such a special occasion as my death, and let me go get it from my cellar, and we'll share this bottle of wine. And the bandits are like, what? Like, why would he? This is an odd behavior from him. And they said, yeah, go get it. So he goes down to the cellar and finds this precious bottle of wine and brings it up and opens it up and passes it around. And they're all kind of disarmed by this, the kindness of this rabbi and his generosity and his being completely unfazed by their threats. This was so foreign to them to be this way, and they kind of liked it, and so they had another round, and then they had another round, and they began to laugh at the rabbi, or laugh with him and pat him on the back. And after a while, the bandits thought, he's not such a bad guy. He's kind of one of us. He likes to have a good time, and he's a good sort. He's got a sense of humor, and we can't really. He's like one of us. We can't really hurt one of us. He's a mate. this rabbi is a mate of ours. And so they slap him on the back and leave him alone. It's exactly the same story that Dave just told. And those stories have been told and told and retold. And there's a million different examples of them, but they're all they're all the same story. And they all have their own wisdom. And that wisdom is wisdom of the ages. It's not Dave's wisdom. The wisdom of the ages is not personal. It's available, however, to you and to us. And we could use more of it to help us behave and help us feel love and trust and the kind of feelings that heal us of all manner of insecurities and darknesses and misunderstandings. And misunderstandings are not, wisdom has a way of overwhelming and conquering our misunderstandings. So that would be my answer to your question.
There's so much in that, Kate.
Thank you. That was really great.
It really was.
Thank you. Yeah.
That really was, Keith. There was so much in that. There was so much information. I know somebody else on this screen was asking a similar kind of thing. And a very quick story, as quick as I can, but when it comes to our loved ones, we can be perhaps the most judgmental, the least compassionate. It's interesting that you speak about other people's conditioning, but I just asked the question, like, what's our conditioning in the interaction?
Mm-hmm.
What is our conditioning? How are we blindly biased in seeing this individual? What's our story of them? And a quick story of my own. Forgive me, Father. I do know what I'm doing right now. I'm so sorry, Dad. Me and my dad, growing up, I didn't always have the most wonderful relationship with my dad. It was hard work at times. But I remember when Jen and I got together, I remember I was with a girl called Amanda. And I told Amanda I'd fallen in love with Jen. And Amanda left. And in the morning, my dad said, "Where's Amanda gone?" I said, "We've split up." And he said, "Why?" I said, "Dad, I've fallen for Jenny." And I'd split up my wife a few years before this, and it had shattered my family's hearts, and seemed like I was the person who kept doing this to them. And I remember my dad saying to me, he said, "When are you going to stop this? When are you going to stop this, Dave? When are you going to grow up and stop it? Do you not see there's other people in this family who this affects?" And I think my words were along the lines of, "F you, Dad.
Mm-hmm.
This is my effing life. I will live my effing life how I choose to effing well live." We had a big blazing argument. And I always saw my dad as this interfering old so-and-so, always sticking his nose in, always has to have an opinion. This was my dad. And with that, he stormed out the room and I went and made some food. I remember after about 10 or 15 minutes, I'd calmed down. And I remember this little voice came in my head. And it just said, your dad hurts. Dad hurts. He's sad. He's really sad. He loves Amanda. He loves Rach, my ex-wife. He loves them. Isn't that what you're wanting more of in this world? Love. And your father loves these people. Why are you condemning your father for loving these people? I couldn't see it whilst I was blind. But once I could see it, it was so obvious, so obvious. Oh, the reason why Dad's behaving like this is because he loves these people. He wants them in his life. And he's scared that they're not going to be. That makes sense. My father changed in a moment. And I remember going through to him and he was sat watching football. I said, pause telly, Dad. And I said to him, Dad, I know you love Amanda. And he went, yes. I said, I know you love Rach. He said, yes. I said, Dad, you never have to stop seeing these people. I said, these people are, you know, go out for meals with them, invite them around for tea. They're still part of the family. They're welcome anytime. You know that. I said, you don't have to, you can still have your relationship with these people. I said, Dad, but there's somebody new coming into your life who you can love as well. And her name's Jenny. And Dad put his telly back on and that was enough said. Dad loves Jen. Dad loves Amanda. Dad loves Rach. But the thing that really stuck out for me was I got to see firsthand how when we speak about separate realities, it's everything. It's the entirety of our reality. And I got to see how my father was a creation of my own mind. It was a creation of thoughts. The father that I meet is a creation of thoughts. It's Dad's this, Dad's that, Dad's this, Dad's that. And when the moment that insight came to me, your father hurts, he stopped being this argumentative, interfering so-and-so, and he became this man who loves people. That's why my father changed like that, because it wasn't necessarily that my father changed. What changed was my perspective on my father. My problem suddenly disappeared, like you were saying earlier on, Keith. My problem suddenly disappeared. But my problem wasn't my father. My problem was the perspective I held on my father, which I was blind to, which was my conditioning that I was blind. I was blind to that point. I couldn't see what I couldn't see. Nobody can see what they can't see. You don't know what you don't know. It's impossible to know something you don't know. But once it became obvious, it was like, oh, that makes sense. And I'm thinking I became different with Dad, and me and my dad's relationship just mushroomed. And I've got a wonderful father. I have the most amazing dad. I really do have the most amazing dad. I'm really, really grateful that I have my father. And I'm really, really grateful that I got to see my part to play in my experience of my father, which is everything. I play the whole part of my experience of my father. There's nobody responsible for my feelings around my father other than myself. And so I loved everything you said to that, Keith. I thought that was wonderful. Please re-watch the recordings of that, because that was, Keith answered that in a really beautiful way. Two hours has gone. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Keith, thank you, mate. I really, really appreciate that. Jen, do you want to say anything to Keith? She's listening. She's got the headphones in, but she's having to look after Lucia. She just come in.
Right. Right.
Is she going to say goodbye?
I want to say,
I'm going to say thank you.
I want to say thank you, Keith.
Nice, sweetheart.
Who's that?
Hey,
Oh, thank you. It's been so nice. It's actually been amazing. I've managed to have the headphones in, still wander around the garden. Like Lucia's just been entertaining herself. She just needed supervision because we've been outside in the pitch black for the garden. But it's just so clear, heartfelt, and it's like that. It's the simplicity, and it's that familiar feeling again of, I don't know, just like a big sigh of relief to listen to.
Granny?
Mummy, Daddy.
Oh, Mummy, Daddy.
She can see us. And then she can, is this Granny? Granny Margaret?
No, that was great, Keith. That really, really was.
well, thank you all so much for inviting me here. It's been a real pleasure.
Daddy, Keith. Keith. The first time she's ever said Keith. There you go.
Yeah.
Daddy,
Hi.
Daddy,
Yeah. Keith.
Daddy, Daddy.
Granny. You can see why we don't get much done. We're so busy pointing at stuff, and it's fun though. No, Keith. Thank you so much, mate. We're so
Thank you all.
You came and supported us.
And Keith, if people wanted to work with you or get in contact with you or find you, what's the best way?
Well, I should say that Brett Chitty and I are doing a program called Uncovering the Hidden Dimension. This hidden dimension, bringing it alive and bringing it to the truth of humanity. And we do those meetings every couple of weeks. So if you go to, I guess it would be Keith Blevins. Maybe search on your web for Keith Blevins and Uncovering the Hidden Dimension. That's one of the programs that we have that we're very proud of. There's some really incredible dynamic presentations of the two of us about this hidden dimension, and so that would be a wonderful way to access what we're doing.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you all.
And please send our love to Valda.
Will do. Will do. I'll see her this afternoon. I'll bring her bunches of it.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much. Thanks for inviting me into your living room and to meet all of your associates and friends. It's been a real joy. Thank you all so much.
God bless, man. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Speak soon, mate.
Thank you, Keith.
Hello.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mara.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, Keith. Hey, we're looking forward to the book.
Oh, he's gone. I am looking forward to the book. I'm really looking forward to the book. All right. Okay. That was Dr. Keith Blevins. Reading your messages. Can you speak of ego? Wonderful. Who was it? Can you speak of ego? Raina. Is Raina still on? Raina dropped off? I think Raina's dropped off. Yep.
This is weird. I can hear you in my ear as well.
All right. All right. How's today been for everyone? It's day one. To the newer people, we do these over 3 days. Like if anybody ever comes and works with us, we always try and ask them to come and work for 4 days. as best they can. And the reason why we do that is because quite often day one can be quite challenging for people, and there's a lot of comparison. Oh, I've heard this before. And there's the moment we go, I've heard this before, we're not listening. We're in the past. The moment we relate what we hear to the past, we're not present. We're not hearing the message. We're hearing what we think we know. We're hearing our own ego. There you go, speaking to that point. We're hearing our own ego. We're not hearing the message of the individual who's speaking. And quite often day one can be like that for people. Day two, quite often be quite confrontational as well. And day three on retreats is generally when people start to settle down. But the fourth day we like to do in person, because it just helps cement things. But it's been day one, and I'm curious just to. Keith's gone. Keith's gone. He's got
saying a Vandercheek.
Oh, Vandercheek, sorry. Yeah, we'd just like to hear what people have heard. Is there anything that, any questions, any reflections, or any observations?
Daddy, look.
Yes, Daddy's watching.
Come on. Leave it.
Hello, this is Anna.
Hiya, Anna, look.
How are you guys? Lovely
Which
to
Anna is
see
it?
you.
Anna Ferrari. Whereabouts are you at, Anna?
I'm in New Zealand.
Are you in New Zealand? All right, okay.
So this retreat starts my 3 a.m. So, and I only found out because I couldn't sleep and I saw Christine's hit post. But I was with you guys last year, and
You were?
yes, and I remember a beautiful feeling. So yeah, when I had enough awakeness to connect to Zoom, I think you guys were in break. And then I just happened to catch Keith and you. And man, that's very powerful. It's just, it does something to quiet the mind when we listen. Mm-hmm. So just gratitude.
Thank you, Anna. We like gratitude. God bless, Dan. Loads of love.
Yeah, thank you so much. I look forward to some more this week. So yeah, great.
Thank you. Thank you, mate. No, thank you for that feedback, Anna. It really is. We think we're listening for information. That's the game of the ego. The ego thinks it needs to know something because the ego will always think it's incomplete because it cannot see, the intellect cannot see source. Why? Because it's born of source. It can't see that creates it. It can only see the creation of it, which itself is a creation of source. So the intellect is completely incapable of holding the magnitude of who or what we are within its comprehension. Which is why quiet, and like Anna said just then, she mentioned the stiller feelings, the quieter feelings, the more beautiful feelings. It is genuinely found in that. It is genuinely found in that stillness. Trying to busy our mind to find it, bearing in mind, if you're going in search of it, you don't actually know what you're searching for. So to go on a search for what you don't know what you're searching for becomes a bit of a ridiculous task. It makes no sense. Embarking on this search for something you don't even know what you're actually searching for. Or perhaps we have got an idea what we think we're searching for. I guarantee you, and I promise you, it's not that, so drop it. You can't comprehend it. cannot comprehend it. But when you start to see the logic of life, when you start to understand, when you start to realize the truth of the breaking down of the illusion of life, the illusion of reality, and I say illusion of reality because every single human being on the planet experiences a different reality. And I know that my reality isn't the truth, otherwise everybody must see the world the way I see it, which I don't think will be a wonderful thing. As much as I think it'd be so much easier if everybody else saw the world the way I saw it. But we don't. It's my version of reality, so therefore it cannot be the truth. That goes for all of us. There's 8 billion realities walking the face of planet Earth right now, just in human form. That's not taken into account the animal kingdom, plant kingdom, the fungal kingdom, the bacterial kingdom, viral kingdom, what other elemental kingdom. It's not taking into account those. There's 8 billion human realities, apparently, if that's correct, and that's the correct number. I don't even know if that's the correct number of people. Well, let's pretend there's 8 billion people walking the earth, and every single one of us sees our own separate reality, sees our own reality, and every single one of us thinks that our reality is the truth, the correct way to observe the world. Gives us a little bit of an indication, gives us a little bit of a glimpse into the nature of it. We're something so magical, we're something so mystical, something so uniquely whole. Storytellers.
Can I ask a question?
Myra, go for it.
Thank you. So I think I got kind of caught up in myself, kind of answering my own question a little bit. You were talking about, maybe looking at your own conditioning. And so if you find yourself on a quest of trying to figure out your own conditioning, is the best tactic to just try to stop it and just be still?
Best tactic. I don't know. Can you put your camera on?
I'd rather not, because I'm not in a position. I had surgery on my face too, so.
Oh, sweetheart, all right. I just wanted to do a little thing with you, but we have this gift that we call consciousness. It's been called many other names, about time, Holy Spirit, all kinds of things. Soul. We have the gift to move that at will. Some people say we don't have free will. In fact, I've even said it in the past. We don't have free will. There's only the will of God. It's interesting, that statement, because I created a separation between me and God. Me and Source, I created a separation which doesn't actually exist. Created a duality that doesn't exist. So we do have free will. And you'll notice you can move your will if you sit quietly now and listen to your environment, and you shift your consciousness from one thing. Perhaps it's a ticking clock. Perhaps it's some cars. Perhaps it's the dog snoring, or my dad snoring. I like your hair, man. For me, it's Lucia. I can hear Lucia. I can also hear a dog paddling around. Maybe it's a telly on in another room. But you can shift your attention at will. And wherever we focus our attention, our consciousness, wherever we focus that attention, it becomes more vibrant. It becomes greater in our experience. It becomes louder. Now, if I am somebody who is placing my consciousness on what's wrong with me, what am I going to experience? I'm going to experience example of more of what's wrong with me. If I place my attention on what's wrong with other people, I'm going to experience more of what's wrong with other people. I remember walking down a beach in Cape Town with Jenny and looking at all the microplastics, and kicking them for about an hour before Jenny went, "Have you even looked at where you are?" She got sick of me whinging. And I looked up and saw the most beautiful sunset over Robben Island and Table Mountain orange, and Cape Town just coming into light, just putting its street lights on. It was beautiful. The sea was turquoise. I was in the most magnificent place. But all I'd focused my attention on was plastic. So I just had this experience of this spot's a, that thumb's come up again. This spot's a shithole. And then when I shifted my attention, all of a sudden I got the experience of this spot's beautiful. So what would I say is the best approach? My answer to that would be to start to notice, to start to become aware, to start to be open to shifting my awareness onto, hang on, how much of this is coming from me? Because the moment we start to do that, we will start to gain experience into it. One of the things, I don't always get life right. My mum and dad can vouch for that. Sometimes I can be a proper dickhead. But one thing that I do feel like I gained through focusing my attention on the nature of life is I've started to gain more insight into it and started to become more aware of my little foibles, my little conditionings, my little traits, things that I've perhaps been blinded to. I had some big learning recently. And I'm really, really grateful for it. It's ego. Ego is just blind conditioning. It's not an evil thing. It's something we created. It's something we dreamt up. It's not who we are. It's just story. Yeah, my answer to that would be allow yourself to become aware. Allow yourself to notice. Your part to play in the conditioning. Your part to play in the, become aware of how you react. Wonderful thing, Sid's message, you know. It speaks to what the sages used to call the dream of life. When you start to become aware of the nature of thought, you become aware of the nature of reality. And when there is only one place to actually look for why I am like I am, and Sid and Keith spoke to this so beautifully just then, that Sid pointed out, if you're not speaking about the now, you're not talking about the principles. The whole of experience is a creation from within in the now. But we have lived in a time of real victimization where time has been brought into the equation, which doesn't really exist. So I can blame my past for why I am like I am, but in actual fact, I actually dreamt up my experience in the now via thought, consciously or unconsciously. And when you realize there is only one place to look for the answer to why I am being like I am being, or why I feel like I feel to that individual, or why I feel like I feel to towards myself or the environment or politics or the world or whatever, and you know that for other people as well, then you start to take your power back from your misunderstanding, your ignorance, our ignorance. And you also start to see that when somebody behaves in a certain way, it isn't a reflection of you, and you don't need to take it quite so personally. It's a reflection of their inner world. It's a reflection of their illusion. It actually has nothing to do with you, how somebody else thinks. And when you stop taking other people personally, when you can start to break that habit, when you can reduce that in your life, there's so much freedom there. You stop being a victim of the outside in illusion. And again, you take more power back from ignorance. One of my friends spoke to me the other day and he said, you know, I met this really grumpy man the other day. He was doing some tree work. I met this really grumpy man, and he opened, I said, I'm looking for such and such. And he said, oh, it's at the other end of the, no, he said, are you sure this is where you want to be? And my mate said, yeah, it's where I want to be. He said, just come through the gate and first caravan on the left, there's a tree over it. And this bloke's going, you sure it's here? And he said, yeah, this is where I was told to come. Anyway, so he drove in, and bloke locks the gate behind him. He has a quick drive around, and then he gets his phone call, and this fella's saying, I'm stood at the gate. And my mate's looking at the gate going, no, you're not. So this fella says, where are you? I'm such and such. He went, no, you're at the wrong end. Come back out and come round. So he had to ask this man. He said, look, could you please let me out? And he said, with that, this man chunted something under his breath, walked over, opened up the gate, said a few choice words at my mate. And he said, it was so funny how he responded. He said, because normally I'd have thought I'd have responded like, fuck you. He said, I just thought to myself, well, that probably is quite annoying for him, actually, because he did actually ask me, are you sure you want to be in here? And I did say, yes, I'm sure I want to be in here. And I could see he actually just wanted to get on with his day, and I was hindering. He said, I kind of get where he was coming from. He didn't take it personally. He could have taken it personally, but he didn't. In fact, he could see it from a different perspective that, don't know if it was the truth or not, but that newer perspective meant that he didn't get dragged down with that man. That man obviously wasn't in a great world. He wasn't living in a great world. Tom took responsibilities for his own feelings. He didn't just react. I thought it was such a beautiful thing. Right, it's 9 o'clock. Let's call it a night. Again, if anybody wants to make a donation, PayPal is info@freedomthinking.co.uk. If you could do it by friends and family, that would be great. And likewise, if you can't, please pay it forward with an act of kindness. We're back again tomorrow at 3 o'clock UK time, 3 o'clock GMT. And tomorrow we have guest speaker Christine Heath, who we love. So thank you everybody for being here. Jerry, I expect to see you there at 2 o'clock.
I'll be there early. You can count on it.
I can count on it.
That's guaranteed.
Bless you, man. Everyone,
love you, buddy.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks, Jen.
Welcome. You're welcome.
See you tomorrow.
Yeah, 3 o'clock UK time tomorrow. We're back on.
Great. See you tomorrow.
Bring questions, bring reflections, bring some observations. If you've got them. All right, everyone.
See you then.
Loads of love.
Bye.
Night, night, Mum, night, Dad.
Bye.
Night, night, Leslie, love. Night, Magnus. Night, Myra. Night, Susan.
Good night. Thank you.
Night, Jane, love.
Bye,
Night,
Dad.
Leslie. God bless everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.